You're listening to Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan.
Welcome to Women's Media Center Live. I'm Robin Morgan. Strong show today. We start with a woman who is a feminist leader in Cairo, in Egypt, and who is facing charges that could bring life imprisonment for her politics, and also is banned from leaving the country. That is a direct call to Cairo that's coming right up. And then we return to New York with a woman who's written a book called The Women Who Made New York. So all that is quite exciting, and first, we have to go inside the headlines. Let's start internationally and then come back home. And let's start on a cheerful note for once. It took 188 years, but Fanny Mendelssohn's masterpiece, Easter Sonata, a complex four-movement piano composition, has finally been performed in London as written by her. Composed in 1829, considered lost, and then once found, assumed by musicologists for another 4 decades that it must have been written by Fanny's famous brother Felix Mendelssohn, the piece had been praised as being masculine, violent, and ambitious. Fanny was 22 when she wrote it, one of about 500 pieces she composed before dying of a stroke at age 41. Masculine and ambitious, eh? Marie Collins, a high-profile member of a commission advising Pope Francis on ways to protect minors from clergy sexual abuse, has resigned from the commission, citing Vatican cultural resistance. A survivor of priestly molestation herself when she was age 13, Collins said, quote, "I have no choice but to resign if I am to retain my integrity," close quote. She added that the tribunal to hold negligent bishops accountable, recommended by the Commission and approved by the Pope in 2015, was never implemented, that the Commission has been denied resources to do its job, including an office or staff, that it would not consider the reduction of punishments against abusive priests, and that Vatican departments rejected the recommendation that all correspondence from victims of clerical abuse receive at least a response. In her 3 years with the Commission, Collins never had the chance to meet with Francis. The United Nations has announced plans to yet again cope with scandals of sexual abuse by UN peacekeepers. This new approach proposes to stop paying countries that fail to investigate claims against their soldiers in a, quote, timely manner, and to put the money instead into a survivors' trust fund. Despite previous attempts to address this long-standing problem, it continues. In 2016, the number of accusations against military and civilian personnel actually increased, affecting 311 known victims, but cases are seriously underreported. About half the victims last year were children, and the largest number of allegations are against peacekeeping troops from the Democratic Republic of Congo. The International Movie Database, IMDb, has made it easier to find films directed and or written by women and featuring women in their own right. The designated F, as in feminist, rating, has been added to the list of search options, and so far over 21,000 films have been tagged. The project's a work in progress, so Hidden Figures and Rogue One have not yet been rated. South Korea's constitutional court removed President Park Geun-hye, the second female head of government, after Brazil's Dilma Rousseff last year, to fall from office on grounds of corruption. Some feminists in Brazil and South Korea have claimed the charges are false and sexist, but the majority of women as well as men in both countries welcomed both impeachments. Apparently, women reserve the right to be just as corrupt as men in certain circumstances. Homeward bound now, an important story that's been buried inside the headlines by hourly breaking news out of Washington. Bills filed by conservative Republican legislators in 16 states would make citizen protests more difficult to mount and easier for authorities to control. This backlash against demonstrations, which, orderly or not, are constitutionally protected free speech, includes, among other measures, bills that would relieve motorists of all liability if they accidentally hit someone blocking the street, make it a felony to commit so-called economic terrorism, defined as obstructing economic activity, that is, picketing or boycotting, and make it illegal to wear hoodies or face coverings while demonstrating. North Dakota, Florida, Iowa, Tennessee, Minnesota, Massachusetts, and North Carolina are among the states that have filed or are preparing to file such bills. Check with your state representatives and take action accordingly. Then there's Washington. No use getting into the tall weeds of reporting on the Republicans' National Sickness Unto Death bill to replace the ACA, or so-called Obamacare, because that bill is being diligently reported on by our newly woke press, and because its adversaries are basically everybody in the nation except Paul Ryan. He and a few of his followers seem to think the words access to are synonymous with being covered. It's important to note, though, that the bill specifically targets women's health. There are 12.9 million women of reproductive age insured by Medicaid who are in danger of losing their coverage if the ACA is repealed. Abortion services, forget it. Repeal and replace would bar individuals and employers from using federal tax credits to buy insurance plans that cover abortion, making some employers decide not to offer abortion coverage, and compelling some insurers to stop offering abortion coverage at all. Although only 3% of Planned Parenthood's procedures are pregnancy terminations, which are already unfunded by the government, the bill nevertheless blocks people with Medicaid coverage from accessing even preventive health care at Planned Parenthood centers, including contraceptives, cancer screenings, and STD testing and treatment. By gutting Medicaid, the bill rolls back maternity and newborn care as well. In general, 24 million more people would be uninsured by this repeal bill here in the States over the next decade if the bill is enacted, with 14 million more people uninsured in this coming year alone. Impact on the elderly would be crushing. Before the ACA, 1 in 3 older Americans lived below the poverty line because of medical expenses. Thanks to the ACA, that number is now 1 in 10, but would skyrocket with repeal. Ironically, older, poor, largely rural people who would be most affected are Trump's base. They would learn the hard way that they've been robbed literally, with tax refunds going to the rich. Combine this with Trump's just-released budget, and you see a desperately ill country. The heaviest budget cuts are aimed at the Department of Health and Human Services, specifically the National Institutes of Health. The $403 million used to train nurses and other medical professionals would be eliminated, for instance. Wide cuts to the Department of Housing and Urban Development, which also funds popular programs like Meals on Wheels, are planned. The Environmental Protection Agency, there goes clean air and water, would be drastically reduced. And many smaller agencies, like the Appalachian Regional Commission, a federal state agency founded in 1965 to promote economic development and infrastructure in some of the poorest parts of the country, would be completely erased. So the nation would, no hyperbole, sicken and die, while the money saved would go, once more, to tax refunds for the wealthy and to the Defense Department and the Department of Homeland Security. Who's going to pay for that wall again? Oh, and international financing would be slashed, for example, to refugee assistance, peacekeeping missions, and third world development, as well as to the United Nations and other global institutions and our own State Department and embassies. Unfortunately, I only have time to mention Trump's mass purge of 46 U.S. attorneys, and no time to delve into the latest Jared Kushner scandal involving China and the sale of New York City's 666 Park Avenue, the highest sum ever for any building in the world. 666. Now, if I were a right-wing radio host, I would point out that that's a sign of the devil. But you gotta love that Hawaiian judge who stopped Trump's not-very-revised Muslim travel ban dead in its tracks. Aloha. We have to take a brief pause here at Women's Media Center Live. I'm Robin Morgan, and I'll be back directly with an amazingly courageous woman who is facing life imprisonment for defending feminism. That's a special call, long distance to Cairo, coming right up.
You're listening to Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan.
Welcome back. My first guest, Mozn Hassan, is an Egyptian feminist and the head of NAZRA for Feminist Studies, which is a new NGO that's focusing on research and training, and it's based in Cairo. It was to create a new young perspective in the arena of Egyptian and Middle East, North African activism in feminism. And prior to the initiative, she had been involved with various NGOs, human rights NGOs throughout Egypt. She was a legal researcher for the American University in Cairo for projects on Sharia and on human rights. She's had extensive experience in women's rights issues. She earned her BA in Greco-Roman Studies from Alexandria University in 2000 and then went on to earn a diploma in civil society and human rights at Cairo University in 2002 and an MA at the American University in Cairo in international human rights law. She is currently facing life imprisonment, a charge that could bring life imprisonment from the military authoritarian government of Egypt headed by General Sisi. And to my great relief at her at least momentary safety and her generosity with her time, she speaks to us direct from Cairo. Here is Mozn Hassan. Mozn, welcome to the program. Marhaba, welcome.
Thank you so much.
Well, thank you. Shukran atir for the work that you do. I would like it if you could explain to the listeners, first of all, what is NAZRA, NAZRA for Feminist Studies, and what the work that it does, and then we'll talk about the way that the government is threatening to put you in prison for life. But first, let's tell the listeners how important this work is. It's an amazing group and a long tradition of Egyptian feminism. Please, go ahead.
Thank you so much. NAZRA mainly is a group which has been formed in 2005 as a group, and as you said, because we are coming from a country which has this historical movement for feminism, we thought that we are just part of the evolving and the continuity of the Egyptian feminist movement. We formed in 2005 as a group when Egypt at this time was changing, and people have been talking about reform generally and trying to detox, and the new era of changing has been happening politically and socially in Egypt. And we thought that we as a group at this time, we were so young. We thought that it's important to have a new feminist discourse within the feminist movement. We thought that the question about public and personal and the gender issues within the changing in Egypt was so important. So we have been formed as a group and registered as an NGO in 2007. Mainly our focus is about the movement and how women's issues can be something about the Egyptian women, not only the state, because one of the problems yearly in the women's issues in Egypt, that the state has been co-opting it as if it is a state responsibility and as if it is a Western thing and it's not coming from the history of the Egyptian women. So we have been gathering different people before the revolution 2011 and trying to continue building the movement in new discourses and having younger people active in the public space and have gender perspective. And by the revolution 2011, we thought that the question is changed, that now people are in the public space, new younger people are existing, and now it's time to have and keep those people in the public space and try to create a feminist discourse within a revolutionary time. So we have been supporting different women, human rights defenders who have been active in the public space. The issue of the sexual violence and gang rape, when it emerged in Egypt, we thought that it's so important to stand as feminists in this issue, because women's bodies is the main issue about the existence in public and private space, and allowing and just not taking violence against women and violence against women's bodies so seriously, the question about movement will not be existing.
That's right.
So we have been supporting different women by services, giving legal, medical, and psychological support, having a discourse about it, fighting with the state and different political parties, how to put the issue of sexual violence on the agenda, how people have to see the responsibility for them to fight this.
Yes.
Also, NAZRA is so interested in the question of women in politics. We think that part of the movement is the existence of women in politics.
Mm-hmm.
It's either by policies or by women have been active and engaging in different elections, parliamentary elections, syndicates, being active in social movements. So we are so interested in this, and we have been doing different work in this. Also because we believe that the movement has not to be centralized within the middle class women in certain cities.
Yes.
So we have been actively mentoring and working with around 20 groups in different Egyptian governorates who emerged after the revolution 2011 and began their own groups and their own feminist groups. So we have been mentoring them and working with them closely to have this diverse movement, which is have rural and urban women, which has middle class and lower classes, which has people talking about violence against women and policies, and others talking about FGMs and how the culture is affecting this, because we think that the diversity of the movement is the most important thing to exist and continue.
Yes, yes.
Also, NAZRA is interested in the question of the art and feminism. We think that this is something important to mainstream the feminist question, and then at the same time how to see our voices have been becoming in different ways. So we have been having a feminist comics. We have been supporting a young group of women who are singers, and they have their feminist band. And we have been doing interactive theater, performance, storytelling, this digital storytelling. So this is for us is about engaging more people to the feminist movement, and at the same time having this rhetoric which can reach people who are ordinary people, not those who are only writing or reading.
Exactly. But the thing that is so extraordinary is some groups take on just one aspect of it, and that's a lot. But you are both doing, in a sense, scholarly work and theory and developing policy. You're also pushing women to be activists and run for office on that level. You're pushing the feminist art and culture, and you're organizing across classes. I mean, and that's just extraordinary. I mean, and one of the fulcrums is of course violence against women. Egypt is a signatory to CEDAW, isn't it? Convention.
Yes, it is. It has some reservations on it, and they have a general reservation on everything which is
religious,
supposedly against Sharia law.
Right. So CEDAW, for those listeners who don't know, is United Nations Convention to End All Forms of Discrimination Against Women, and many countries are signatories to it. The U.S. is not, but because we don't even have the ERA yet. But some countries are signatories, with exceptions, and apparently Egypt is one. But still, there's a huge irony there. Countries sign on to it, patriarchal countries sign on to it, and then just ignore that they signed. All right. So with this amazing backlog of work and the incredible use that you are to Egypt, it would seem to me, you're caught between a rock and a very hard place, because it's religious fundamentalism, Islamists on one side, and on the other side, secular but army, military, and neither of them are good for women. So with the army currently in charge and solidifying a very authoritarian rule, they've now come after NGOs, and you are on their list. So tell us about that.
Yeah, generally, because as you said, we are living within an authority which mainly they don't want other voices by any way. And even if they have this rhetoric internationally that they support women, but because it's mainly about patriarchal authorities, that they think that they are the people who can protect women, and the issues of women is their issues. So one of their problems with us that we are part of these independent groups who are not saying that this is the real situation in Egypt. There is a big case in Egypt which is targeting civil society and feminist groups called the case. They are within the media calling it the foreign funding case. It's mainly a case targeting and charging activists and human rights activists and women human rights defenders on receiving foreign funding. And this funding, supposedly, as they are saying, it is defaming this Egypt image, and it's helping. It's like it's an espionage case.
Yeah, they're always using the same playbook. It's another form of outside agitators, because people domestically couldn't possibly be discontent with an authoritarian ruler, so it must be coming from someplace else. Therefore, we can call the people who are protesting pawns and accuse them of treason. I mean, it's the same playbook, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. It is mainly, and for us, for me personally, they are having charges against me that I'm helping and supporting women to have irresponsible liberty for their lives, and it's mainly about targeting women.
Yes.
Targeting.
Have they accused you of destroying the family?
Yes.
Ah, there we go.
Yes.
Yeah. And you've had to let go most of your 50 staff members, or you've had to lay them off, or you've been prohibited from leaving Egypt yourself. Tell us about the specifics of the persecution. Yeah,
they have been, last March, a year ago, they summoned 3 of our team in front of the judge as witnesses against me, and then after that they called me as a defendant, and they asked me for summoning, and after that they postponed it. In June they banned me from traveling. In this January they freeze my assets personally and the assets of the organization, and this is a new thing in Egypt that we are the first feminist organization has been freeze their assets from 50s, and we are the first organization which is registered under the Ministry of Social Solidarity, this ministry which is responsible for the civil societies. So we are already registered, but they freeze our assets, and this is mainly what they want. They want to stop us from doing our work. So they want to end our resources. They want to stigmatize us. Yes. Because this will not help us to reach more people. They want just to make us afraid all the time and caring about ourselves, not other women. Yes. And they're trying to do this. The situation is so hard. Many of the people, not only that they left, but many of our activities we couldn't conduct now, not only about the resources, also about the security pressure that we couldn't hire a place to have an activity. We couldn't have activities in our office because it's not safe. it's not safe not only for us, because we know that we took this risk, but for other people, it's
Yes,
not
of
safe
course.
for them.
Of course.
Most of the activities and the things we have been doing and used to do, it stopped. Some people left, but I think NAZRA is lucky to have a genuine activists and those women and men who decided to continue in these harsh times.
Very.
So we are continuing doing things, not like before, but we are trying that. We think that we will not stop by any way. If they want to stop us, they have to do it, but we will not.
You won't help them. You won't, yes. It's brilliant. It's an amazing, amazing work and courage. And you are you facing criminal charges, or is there the threat of criminal charges? And what would that charge be?
I'm facing criminal charges. I face different charges which led to life imprisonment.
Is that, I mean, what can they charge you with? Is this,
there is an article in the penal code which has been amended by the current president, Fattah al-Sisi, in 2014, accusing anyone who's taking money or anything or any other else or things by life imprisonment. This is the article we are accused of. We are accused of having reports and doing activities which harms Egypt and which is against the military and
oh my God,
and the police. For me, they have accused me for this irresponsible liberty.
Oh yes, irresponsible liberty. That'll do it every time. Oh my God, Mozn. What can we do? Is there anything we do or can do, or is that making it worse? Because then you're getting support from outside. I mean, certainly I want people to know that this is happening, and which is why I'm so glad were able to reach you in Egypt. But is there anything that should be done by the global women's movement that isn't yet being done to support you?
I'm always thinking that I know that many people in our movement international have been saying that we're afraid that we harm you. I think this is not true, because first of the thing, this is one of our beliefs that the feminist movement is an international movement. It's a global movement. We have been learned from many feminists abroad. You have been saying that you know a lot about the feminist movement in Egypt. This is about solidarity and support. So
and I also think that there's safety in having your profile raised internationally. We've seen that in many countries where a woman is singled out or a group is singled out, and once it becomes an international issue and it's in the press internationally, there's a strange sort of, not complete, but a somewhat protection in that. What do you feel about that?
Yeah, I think so, and I think honestly as feminists, solidarity is in the core of our movement. So feeling this solidarity and seeing it is something important, and it helps. It helps that those women who are sitting in a place in Cairo having all this pressure, they know that there are other sisters.
They're not alone. Yes, they're not. You're not alone. You're not alone. We should give the website as long as it's still operating. Please give the website for NAZRA, because that's where people can go and register support and find out more. Yes?
Yeah, our website is still working. It's www.nazra, NAZ for zoo, RA.org. NAZRA.org.
I'm so grateful to you for being with us today and for telling us the story firsthand. We will stay on this story. We will not let it disappear.
Thank you so much, and it was my pleasure being with you. Thank you so much.
Have to take another quick break here at Women's Media Center Live. I'm Robin Morgan, and I will be back coming right up with the Surrealism Corner, as well as my second guest, bringing with her the women who made New York. So don't go away.
You're listening to Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan.
And we're back again, just in time to visit the Surrealism Corner. Well, I could start by just giving a passing wave en route to other things to Kellyanne Conway, who this last week gifted us with, first of all, the mission that microwave ovens might be taking your photograph, and then tried to walk that comment back by explaining she was not in the job of having evidence. We kind of knew that for some time, Kellyanne. Anyway, in any other White House, if an administration copied word-for-word text from a corporation and then put that out as a White House statement on White House letterhead, everybody would hyperventilate properly. There'd be an investigation. There'd be an apology. Somebody would get fired. Oh, not in this White House. No, 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 no. A White House press release praising ExxonMobil cribbed an entire paragraph plus another sentence from ExxonMobil. There was no action taken. The president, in fact, tweeted 4 times praising Exxon for creating jobs because of him. And yet the Washington Post, of course, noted that he was, as usual, taking credit for a program that had been announced in 2013. Texas State Representative Jessica Ferrer is proposing legislation that would fine men $100 for masturbating and require a 24-hour waiting period for buying Viagra. Don't you love her? Jessica Ferrer introduced the bill, which she calls a Man's Right to Know Act, as a way to call attention to the limited access and the strict draconian regulations that women face in getting abortions in Texas. Here's one a little bit surreal, but good for them. Canada's Girl Guides, well, they canceled all U.S. travel because there was a Trump rule about border crossings, and they might have some Muslim members in the Girl Guides. Surreal. And last week we talked a little bit about the Coast Guard and cuts in the budget, in Trump's budget forthcoming, about the Coast Guard to pay, of course, for the wall. But I wanted to go into a little bit greater depth on that, because the budgets will reflect deep cuts not only in the Coast Guard and the Transportation Security Administration, but also in FEMA, Federal Emergency Management Agency. So the goal is to shift about $5 billion toward hiring more agents for Customs and Border Protection and ICE, Immigration and Customs Enforcement, and, of course, toward the infrastructure of building the wall, which Mexico sure ain't going to pay for. Here is what the Coast Guard does. In addition to monitoring the waterways around the entire United States for foreign and domestic threats both, the Coast Guard plays a significant role in combating the very problems that Trump claims he wants to address. In 2016 alone, it intercepted more than 6,000 undocumented immigrants and 200 metric tons of cocaine and 52,000 pounds of marijuana worth almost $6 billion. Should law enforcement officials clamp down on the land crossings into the states, maritime interdiction will most likely increase, and the need for the Coast Guard will be even greater. Within the TSA, the proposal calls for the elimination of a handful of programs that have played a critical role in airport security and counterterrorism since the September 11th attacks. They include a program that trains pilots to respond to an attempted armed takeover of the cockpit, a grant program that supports local law enforcement patrols at airports, and another, the Visible Intermodal Prevention and Response Program, that sends both undercover and highly visible officers to conduct security sweeps in high-risk airports and train stations. Surreal. And last but not least, 6 years after the Fukushima disaster, there's a new danger that looms. Brace yourself. Radioactive boars. Boars, yes, like very large wild pigs. They occasionally attack humans, and they're now glowing in the dark. I can't think of many things worse than running into a glowing radioactive wild boar. Boars are considered, boar meat in northern Japan, where this is happening, are considered a delicacy, but they're too contaminated to eat. It's reminiscent of the surreal landscape in Chernobyl, where wildlife still thrives despite high radiation levels in the aftermath of the 1986 world's worst nuclear accident. With the absence of humans, Chernobyl, which you will remember is in Ukraine, has become a refuge for all kinds of animals, including moose, deer, brown bear, lynx, and even wolves. They inherit, although they also inherit what humans have left behind, toxic radiation. That's a surreal landscape. And now for my next guest. Julie Scelfo was a correspondent at Newsweek and then moved on to the New York Times as a staff reporter. She still is a frequent contributor to the Times. She has had work appear in Salon, O, the Oprah magazine, lots of other things, and today she's here to talk about her new book, her first book, The Women Who Made New York, which is published by Seal Press and is very interesting indeed. Regular listeners to this program know that I am a rabid New Yorker, so this was a natural. Julie Scelfo. Julie, welcome to the program.
Thanks for having me, Robin.
Well, I'm a New Yorker.
Well, when I was writing this, it reminded me, though, how much this city is part of this country and how
the world.
Much the city shaped the country.
Totally. I mean, and in fact, the world. The reason that I love the city is that it is a micro world. It is and it's that people, I think, subconsciously know that, or the UN wouldn't be here. I mean, anyway, the book is The Women Who Made New York. And it's so interesting because how did you come to write it? I mean, I want more of it. I want it to be volume 1 and there should be 2, 3, and 4.
Gloria Steinem suggested that I do one for each borough, which sounded like a cool idea, and I am thinking now about branching out and doing other cities. But I can't take credit for the original idea. My editor, Laura Mazur, who's the executive editor of Seal Press, which is a small publishing house out of Berkeley that only publishes women authors. She had the initial idea, and she brought it to me. And her idea was to just do 25 women. Mm-hmm. And once I got started, she had the original idea of pairing me with the illustrator Hallie Heald, whose work is phenomenal. But once she handed it off to me, and I began thinking about what it meant, what is New York City? And I had to define that because everybody's idea of New York is a little different. And then when I began doing research to try and accumulate names of women who had done things without which New York City wouldn't be the same place, I found myself in the position of having hundreds of women, of course, and so many of them who were not known throughout history. And it was very challenging to figure out how to cut it down and sort of shape the book to tell the story I wanted to tell.
I thought it must have been, because otherwise this would be a 7,000-ton book. I was touched and glad and relieved that you understand clearly in the book. You do Stanton and Anthony, and you understand how much of the women's suffrage movement was New York based, and women whom I've loved for years, but many people never heard of. That it was really Emily Roebling who finished the Great Brooklyn Bridge once her husband had that terrible accident. So this incredible structure, which is like a Bach fugue in steel, was actually finished by a woman. But you go into contemporary times.
Well, that's the thing, we have all of these ideas in our head about how history happened, but the reality is that every human being who records history is limited by their perspective. And most of history has been recorded by men, and the perspective that was white men. And so the perspective often neglected all of these other things that are happening around. So what I wanted to do was tell the truth about history by in the perspective that I have, which is a little more holistic, it tried to incorporate women from the 1600s all the way up to the present. I tried to go even further back, and I talked to some experts who study Native American history and tried to look for women in the Lenape tribe who lived here, but actually part of their culture was to not make permanent changes to their environment. They adapted to the environment rather than force the environment to change. So I wasn't able to identify a single Lenape woman to include, which would have been so cool. Yeah. But anyway, I wanted to present a picture of New York City the way I see it.
Yeah, I just want more. That's all. I think they need. For example, I thought, isn't Brenda Berkman in this book? You defined at one point your when you had to hone, which was a hard task, when you had to hone your qualifiers for the book. You said the definition would be people without whom an important part of New York could not exist, or at least wouldn't be the same. And I want to propose Brenda Berkman for volume 2, and women like her. She was, for the listener.
She's amazing, and this book is not a book about female firsts. For example, there are all these amazing women who were the first to do X or the first to do Y, and this is just slightly different. I didn't want it to be that book. Right. For example, I uncovered the first Asian American female police officer to join NYPD, and clearly what she did was important. Clearly, it had wide-reaching implications, but at the same time, I couldn't really argue that she made the NYPD. Right? The NYPD had been up and running for a long time, and there were a lot of other women who came much earlier who fought various fights, who had to bring lawsuits just to even get into the NYPD and maybe change some of the practices there. So it was very hard to leave women out, and actually, I lost a lot of sleep at night because it was so hard for me. This is certainly not the last word on the women who made New York. I hope people get interested in these women and then go out and read more comprehensive biographies.
Well, and I hope
this is a starting point.
And it is a starting point, and a very important one. And I hope that for listeners who don't know, by the way, Brenda Berkman was the first woman to integrate, that is, women, into the fire service. The reason that there are firefighters who are female in New York at all is because of her and the long battle that she led on that. So that's why. But I understand your thing about first. I'm just saying there should be another volume.
I know. Well, again, I had to sort of figure out how to take all this information and make it readily accessible. And I was very lucky to have some assistance from the folks over at the New York Historical Society, where, I was speaking to the president over there, Louise Mirror, and I explained to her how frustrated I was about not being able to include everything. And she said, listen, there's no one museum exhibit that it can include all of New York City's history. There's no way one book is going to either. So I had to accept that some women would be left out.
No.
But the women who are included give you so much color and excitement. I mean, I'm so inspired by their stories throughout the city's history. Women have confronted men who have belittled them, who have dismissed them, who have not included them. And as Shirley Chisholm said, if they don't give you a seat at the table, pull up a folding chair. Right. And that's what these women did.
Yeah, no, it is very heartening. The women who made New York, and we've been talking with Julie Scelfo, and thanks for being with us today.
Thank you so much. It's my pleasure.
We have to take one last break here at Women's Media Center Live. I'm Robin Morgan, and I will be back in just a moment with some fighting words.
You're listening to Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan.
And we're back again with some fighting words. When the New York Times first adopted its motto, "All the news that's fit to print," in 1897, I'd wager that nobody there could have predicted a day when anyone would argue that fake news had a proud right to see print. Just recently, the Washington Post chose a new motto for itself: Democracy dies in darkness. Well, this program doesn't have a motto per se, although words are basically all I have to fight with. So I hope the Post won't mind my adapting their motto here with a tweak. Democracy dies in silence. Words really do matter. The latest phrase being bandied about is the deep state. It was originally used to describe a cabal or corps of powerful men, civilian, military, or both, operating secretly within another state run by aware or unaware puppets. The purported aim of this coterie was to control the visible state, or, when deemed desirable, to sabotage it. It was about power. Steve Bannon, Trump's Rasputin in more ways than one, resurrected the phrase deep state from its old usage in describing pockets of power in the former USSR, China, Turkey, or other authoritarian societies. It's Bannon, he of the pot belly and crumpled pants, the unshaved chin and the alcoholic's red nose, Bannon with his pseudo-intellectual pretensions, who now wields the phrase. He uses it to accuse the courts, the Congress, the press, and our other democratic institutions, along with feminists, environmentalists, civil rights leaders, and grassroots activists, as if we all comprised a secret society conspiring to wield evil power against the innocent Trumpian regime. He also hurls the charge, especially against career diplomats, statisticians, and principled public servants in cabinet departments and in government agencies who are currently risking their jobs and their safety to dare leak revealing evidence of what Trump, under Bannon's stated agenda, is actually doing illegally to our government. Bannon has read a few books, which in Trump world makes him not only an intellectual but a genius. He knows, for example, that deconstruction is a concept pushed by Derrida and Lacan, Frenchmen enamored of abstraction and fearful of the simple word analysis. Deconstruction became chic in some American academic circles. This knowledge passes for brilliance in Bannon, since to Donald Trump, deconstruction is what happens when one of his real estate deals falls through. So, sorry, but nothing about Bannon impresses me as intelligent, a slick Wall Street operator, than a B-movie producer of right-wing films, a wife-beater, a gossip peddler, ethno-nationalist, and right-wing tabloid peddler. No, Bannon is not someone I would describe as a serious thinker. But I would describe him as a shrewd, grasping proponent of the shallow state. A good description of the Trump regime. The White House is suffering through chaos at the headquarters, with a ripple effect shuddering out to thousands of unstaffed posts throughout the entire government, no articulated serious policies, no clear chain of command, and competing factions worthy of a Borgia court. It's the epitome of what Bannon openly pledged to install in place of the so-called deep state. Now, well might you ask, since when, apart from the beach, is shallowness a virtue? It's this shallow state that Trump presides over, this superficial state. It has photo ops but no real press conferences, meetings with foreign leaders that are content-free of past or present U.S. policy that has been forged by a State Department founded by Thomas Jefferson and now run by a corrupt oil CEO. It has meets and greets that give more time to Harley-Davidson execs and their motorcycles on the lawn of the White House than to heads of historically black colleges who came in a listening session that somehow got reduced to another 10-minute photo op. Meanwhile, instead of playing its constitutional role as one of the three checks and balances bodies of government, a right-wing-controlled Congress is trying to piggyback its own agenda on Trump's diminishing popularity with an extremist base before that, too, vanishes. The shallow state is, from its patriotism to its press releases, fake. Fake news is naturally produced by this fake state, a reversal of the real. For example, if you want to know what they're doing, pay close attention to what they accuse others of doing. Because the fake state promises fake freedoms, for example, the GOP repeal and replace health care bill, It follows that superficiality is necessary to project a surface image of accomplishment in order to protect the anarchy boiling beneath. Those creating the chaos call it freedom, and for them it is, since in the absence of democratically agreed on rules, the strongest, and only the strongest, profit and prosper. Here's a personal example from back when I was a young feminist in my consciousness-raising group. We women sat on the floor in a circle once a month, and as each woman in turn talked as vulnerably and honestly as she could about her life, well, as each of us did this and then reacted to other women doing the same in the circle, we encountered a problem. Some women spoke very little, while others held forth quite a lot. As you might have imagined, I confess I was one of the over-talkers. So we devised a formula for balance. Each woman would have a certain number, 5 or 10, depending on the size of the group, of stones. You could use poker chips or playing cards or toothpicks, anything handy. We used pebbles. The point was that every time you spoke after your initial so-called testimony, you had to spend a stone, putting it in the middle of the circle. And once you had spent all your stones, you couldn't speak again until everyone else had exhausted all of their pebbles. This produced some funny results until we jerkily, slowly got the hang of it. Some women blithely spent all of their pebbles in the first half hour or so, and then had to sit silently cooling their heels. Others hoarded their stones so as to get the last word. Shy women were encouraged by this process to spend their stones, because it was as unacceptable to wind up with your pile intact as to have spent it all too soon. Spending stones gave me the opportunity, reluctantly accepted at first, I admit, to really listen to others. We are none of us humans born fair. Yet I think, oddly, that we may well be born with a sense of what's not fair. But we need to learn how to practice fairness, learn how to wait, learn how to catch up. Without that skill, our solidarity settles for uniformity. Our diversity shatters. Without that skill, we lack depth perception, and in fact, depth. But what if instead we redefined the deep state? What if we understood it as that which is forcibly repressed, hidden, disempowered? That deep state, for example, is comprised of women the world over, whose unpaid work, through reproduction alone, not even counting all the rest, enables the existence of every other kind of work, every economy, every progress. That deep state consists of people trying to break free of a deliberately enforced amnesia about enslavement, both sexual and labor, back in 18th and 19th century America and in today's 21st century world. That deep state is populated by artists, scientists, and philosophers who can't or won't let a day pass without committing the act of noticing. Bannon is right to fear that deep state, because the invisible and indivisible ones who cluster together in that deep state are now massing. The disabled, the indigenous, the poor, the illiterate, the old, children, refugees, beaten and prostituted and raped women. It's a deep, deep state. In an even deeper state, the 150 to 200 species of plant, insect, bird, and mammal going extinct every 24 hours. And in the deepest state of all, the trees defoliate in revolt, and the soil dries to sand, while the ice caps melt and the seas rise. That deep state has indeed now come together to sabotage the shallow state, even if by the simplest means, by keeping each other alive long enough to spend all our pebbles, by keeping our species alive long enough to perhaps evolve into something less primitive than our current version of humanity, by listening to what the speechless are saying. Democracy dies in silence. This deep state, the state of being that has depth, is all around us. It is us. Those are my fighting words. Add yours on Twitter, and be sure to tag us at WMC Live and use the hashtag fighting words. And that's it for today. This program is syndicated, but if you can't find the broadcast on a radio station in your area, you can always visit us at WMClive.com for the show, plus the archive of all our previous episodes, and at iTunes Worldwide, where you can stream, download, and subscribe to our show's podcast. Also, be sure to find WMC Live on Facebook and Twitter. And you can check out my own website and blog at robinmorgan.net and find me on Facebook and Twitter, too. Portions of this program were taped earlier. Opinions expressed here do not necessarily represent the WMC. Here's the family for Women's Media Center Live. WMC President and Executive Producer of this program, Julie Burton, and our founding and sustaining sponsor, Regina K. Scully. I'm Robin Morgan, your producer and host. Thank you for being with us, and don't forget to join us next week right here on Women's Media Center Live.
For the smartest talk about news, politics, sex, books, religion, race, and more, tune your radio to Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan. Audacious, witty, provocative, informative, and fun. It's Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan on WMCLive.com. Talk radio with a brain.